everybody. I'm Simon Majumdar, the host and writer of Eat My Globe, things you didn't know about food. And on today's very special episode, we are so lucky to have one of my favourite chefs, Eric Adjepong. Now, Eric has recently opened a brand new restaurant in Washington, D.C., known as Elima. And I have to say, just look at the menu. There are so many dishes I want to eat right now. I particularly like chofi, which are fried turkey tails with mojo onions, dawa dawa aioli, I hope I got that right, shito, and his mum's hot sauce. Oh my godfathers, that just sounds fantastic. So we'll have to talk about this restaurant a little later on. Eric is also one of the Food Network's brightest new stars. Having worked with him, I can see why people love him on shows like Tournament of Champions and Alex vs. America. He is a natural. Not only is he a fantastic chef, but he is also an advocate for public health and has taken the role of ambassador for Save the Children, amongst others. And indeed, he has a Master's of Public Health from the University of Westminster in London, where actually I went to do one of my PGCEs, a postgraduate University of Westminster. So I love that area. Now he is one of publishing's hottest new cooking talents. 2 years ago, Eric sent me his wonderful book for children, Sankofa, a culinary story of resilience and belonging. And today he's going to be talking to us about his latest book, Ghana to the World, Recipes and Stories that Look Forward While Honoring the Past. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my very, very great pleasure to introduce you to the one and only Chef Adjepong. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Simon. Thank you so much, good sir, for the amazing intro. And I echo it. You are just as charming and brilliant, and someone that I really, really enjoy working with, especially during our times on Food Network and beyond. So excited to talk to you about this book and everything else that's going on in my world. So cheers. Thank you so much.
What I want to do at the beginning is to just ask you, because you've got so much going on, I mean, so much, what else you have in the works? Obviously, don't give anything away, but what else you have in the works? And then we'll talk about your fantastic book. It is fantastic. And what I'm doing is I want everyone who's listening to this, and we get quite a few listeners, I want them to go out and buy this because it is fantastic. But anyway, tell us what you're doing now.
Not sleeping much. I got to be honest. I'm living the dream. I really am. I'm in my a really memorable moment in my life where the restaurant is a little bit over a month old. The book has now been released, and that has been keeping me extremely busy. In addition to hosting a couple of shows on Food Network now, and
which shows are those?
So yeah, Alex versus America has now been in its heading into its 5th season, and then Wildcard Kitchen heading into its 3rd season. It's a pleasure and an honor. I grew up watching cooking shows and talent as a younger chef and a young person. So it's very humbling to have this sort of position now, and to think that I'm actually maybe encouraging or maybe inspiring someone, that I was inspired when I was younger. It's a pretty sort of full circle, humbling moment. But yeah, it's a lot. I'm also a father, and my daughter keeping me busy as well. So a lot of hats. Sometimes I wear a couple of hats at the same time. But I'm enjoying everything about it.
Eric, so let's talk about your phenomenal book. How did it come about? Yeah. And I know that you worked with someone to help you co-author it as well, didn't you? So correct. I'd love if you mention them, because I think they don't often get the mentions that they deserve.
Not for me, Simon. I listen. This book would not be anywhere close to being published or as full and thoughtful as it is if it wasn't for my co-author Portia Wilson, who was a phenomenal writer who came along this journey with me really young and early into this project. Actually, at its infancy, like I met Portia via the New York Times. She wrote an article on me in 2018.
Oh, wow.
In 2018, after I did a Top Chef. And she wrote the article. And funny enough, I met her maybe a few months later. The idea of the book was sort of sparked maybe around that time, but I bumped into Portia in Philadelphia and, just sort of had this random urge to just ask her, like, hey, you did such a great job and, you've helped me with so much with this one article. Would you be interested? Or have you actually even written or co-authored a book before? And she said no. And I said, great. I've never written a book. So we're in great company. And she was just so open to the idea and warm to the idea. And this is about, 5 years ago now, just about, to think about where this book has traveled over 2 continents, and being able to tell these amazing stories from both the past and, some of my more recent stuff and things that I've been inspired by chefs like, you and other people from the Food Network and beyond. It's truly a culmination of things that have inspired me, but things that I'm also inspired by. And the voice of Portia Wilson is literally all throughout. I would send voice notes to Portia, and she would write them out in our manuscript. And I'm like, this sounds like me, but it sounds a lot more intelligent. It sounds like more studious. It sounds, more scholarly. And she has a great sort of knack for using these amazing sort of phrases and words, but then also keeping things very concise and getting straight to the point. And I really admire that about her writing. And it's so powerful that way because you're able to sort of give a really full and enriched storytelling and details about moments of where we are, who we're with, what we're doing, the food, the smells, all of all of that texture. She just does a great job of, delivering that in the book. And I'm very, very thankful for Portia and to Portia for all the amazing work that she's put behind this project.
I'm so pleased that you gave her a mention because they are sometimes the people who get forgotten when they're writing, cookbooks, all kinds of books, but particularly cookbooks. And let's talk about the images as well, because they are, and I'm not just saying this, they are stunning. Because who took those, or was it one person? Was it because
it was a committee?
It's amazing.
Cheers. Thank you so much. One of the things that I really wanted to sort of hammer home is obviously the recipes and the storytelling, but the photos themselves, it should be coffee book or coffee table material, right? Something that you can pick up and browse through, whether you are, legitimately cooking the recipes or if you just want to get a quick browse and be inspired by the amazing photos. So I really wanted to get everyday people doing everyday things in Ghana. And I had an amazing photographer by the name of Carlos Tawa, and he was able to capture, mothers and children at the market, men at work, the fishermen in the different towns, the ingredients, it really, the children playing, like it really was a very textured sort of snapshot.
Everything about it is stunning.
Cheers. Yeah, he did an amazing job. And then Doa Ekladi was the photographer who did all of our food photography in Brooklyn, New York. So again, spanning 2 continents, we had an amazing photographer sort of doing the lifestyle aspect and piece of it. And then the more studio sort of shots that we take of the food. And Doa's eyes are amazing as well when it comes to detail and highlighting certain ingredients and sort of putting things together. So it was really a collaborative effort between photographers, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Liberty Fennell, who was the food stylist, and Chef Nana and Chef Tyreek from New York, who also helped with the production of everything. So I'm so thankful for all of the amazing creatives that helped sort of get this book visually to where it's at.
Yeah, and as someone who was in publishing, the fact that you mention all of those, I think, is wonderful because they don't usually get mentioned. They just don't. And so thank you for that. And it is overall, with you as the center and all the others around you, it is a stunning book. So anyone who hasn't seen this book, Ghana to the World, Recipes and Stories that Look Forward While Honoring the Past, please, please, please do go and get it. Have a look at it. If you really like it, just buy it because it is a fantastic book. But let's talk about you, okay? Because I wanted to go through your thoughts when you're doing this. And I don't know why this, but I was just thinking of you describe your culinary skills of showing instead of telling. And is this something in your blood? Because I was thinking when you said that, I was thinking of the griot. These I don't know, from West Africa. They would go around and they would tell stories and histories, and you would kind of tell yours by cooking, and they would tell theirs by history. And I don't know if you even thought that, but that's how I thought when I was hearing you tell that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it really is all encompassing. To be in this beautiful world of culinary arts in this industry that encompasses so much, whether it's hospitality, restaurant, catering, so forth, so on. There's an amazing opportunity to storytell as well. You are when you want to offer a full in-depth experience. Yes, we're providing food. You get to taste it, you get to smell it. But then when you add the storytelling, now you're giving romance, you're giving depth,
Yes,
you're giving a bunch of other things that I think really sort of captures all of your senses, so to speak. And that's incredible. That's an incredible place to be as a chef and a culinarian. And then, when you're offering those types of experiences, I think the guest leaves more enriched. So yeah, the food itself speaks for itself. But then, speaking with authority and intelligence to it, talking about the ingredients, talking about sort of the love letters, so to speak, to my mother and my father and the places that I grew up in. I'd be, this book, and honestly, me as a chef wouldn't be anywhere near where I would be without those sort of like memories to take back from. So, it's all sort of wrapped into one nestled sort of package. The food and the storytelling, and everything else really goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I love that. And when you talk about it, I think that kind of griot thing comes from you.
Sure.
Um, the, what I also loved is everyone, I think, certainly everyone in the cooking business will have a tale of their mothers or their aunties or their, wherever, and even their fathers, teaching them the roles of cooking. And I have one when my mother was actually a Welsh woman, but my father taught her how to cook Bengali food. And I'd always stand, but in the day she was cooking, they didn't have any ingredients. So she'd do a fish stick curry
Yeah.
and feed it to him. And so tell us about your own experiences and your mother, Abina.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's wow. What a woman, what a lady. I'm so thoroughly impressed by her story. Coming and being born and raised in Ghana and Kumasi, and coming to the States at a relatively young age. Uh, you know, she her love language is food. How she communicates and how she shows love and expresses love is through food. My mom will make sure that you are fed, before you leave the house, and that's the way to make sure. That's her way to make sure that you're loved on. So I would watch her. I would watch her sort of have those moments in the kitchen, and that was her domain. And she brought to me a superpower to the house, bringing everybody together, at one specific time so we can have dinner, whether it's in the family, whether it's friends from the neighborhood. Everyone really enjoyed my mom and the hospitality that she gave. So I, again, just so lucky to fall in this industry because I think I had a really great teacher, really, young and early. She probably doesn't realize how much of an impact her hospitality and sort of picking up on, the warmth and, the provision that she offered via her food. That was really important to me. So I'd be, more than remiss if I didn't mention her and my love for her, of course. And, like you mentioned, everyone has sort of those origin stories with either grandma or mom or, some sort of matriarchal or patriarchal sort of figure in their life. But for me specifically, my mother was a pillar when it comes to food, when it comes to West African food specifically. But then also, she would try her hand at a lot of like American dishes. Now that she has an American son, she's given birth to his son in America. She would make sure that like I didn't feel left out with some of the dishes that my friends were eating in the neighborhood and stuff like that. So I really just admire all of what she does, and still to this day, a fantastic cook who still gives that same energy to the food that she cooks and she offers. So it's funny. She came down to help me with me and my daughter maybe a few weeks ago, about a month ago actually, and for whatever reason, Simon, she didn't think that I cooked anything. So she brought some jollof rice to the house. She made it from her home in New York and she brought it to me in DC. And then, you know what? I did actually make jollof rice myself. So we had like a jollof off, her jollof versus my jollof. And and my daughter was the taste tester. So we set it up like chopped, and it was a whole sort of blind tasting. And my daughter picked my mom. My daughter picked grandma's, and I happily conceded to that. That was fine with me, but it was a cool moment to see sort of three generations having cooked that same meal, and it's really great to see my daughter now embracing the culture, embracing the meals, and I love the relationship between food specifically that my now daughter has with my mom, which is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's that must be. I mean, both of my parents. I'm obviously a lot older than you, but both of my parents passed away, and I'm missing that thing. When I would go home, my mother would bake, or she'd do an Indian dish, even though she was Welsh. My father was Indian, and if she didn't have anything like that to serve us, she thought she was doing something wrong. And I'd come up from London, and she'd always have a whole table filled with food. So it's that kind of thing, and because you still have her, you have to what's the word? You have to be conscious of her while she's around.
Absolutely, absolutely. Cherish every moment. Even I mean, she's still a mom, so she still has those sort of mommy qualities where she's making sure that everything is her way, and I get that. But no, you're absolutely right. Being conscious and cherishing every single moment is something I try to do very consciously myself.
Oh, great. Now, I do notice again in your book, you use two symbols. There's one to say this is a traditional dish and this is a modern dish. And I don't know, the modern dish using the Sankofa, is that right?
Correct.
And then the second dish, and I can't be sure of how to pronounce this. Nea Omnin?
Yep, Nea Omnin. Yes, exactly. Yep.
And so could you tell us how these come about and why you wanted to use those particular?
Definitely. One, this is an idea from Portia Wilson, the amazing co-author behind the book. But what we did when we sort of took a 30,000-foot view of the dishes, we noticed that there was a stark separation between traditional recipes, things that haven't been touched or changed or altered, things that if, my great grandparents were to cook it would look very, very similar to the same process and the ingredients used. And then we had some of the things that I've been more inspired by in my career, obviously a little bit more recent or thereafter. So things that I've picked up, in my different restaurants that I've worked in, or in Top Chef, or working with the amazing chefs that we work with on Food Network as well. So we really wanted to highlight the sort of moving forward while honoring the past, the sort of subtext of the book. And it's a moment to sort of signify like, hey, when you're cooking this recipe, this is the way that like our ancestors cooked it, and if you're cooking this recipe, this is more of like an inspiration or, taking ingredients or the techniques and from, indigenous ingredients and techniques rather, and how I sort of see my mind at this, age at 2023, 2024, 2025 and beyond, what I really think this food can look like, and push it forward. So I love this. This is sort of the first time I've ever seen two symbols sort of signifying traditional versus more modern and current recipes in a cookbook. And I'm really happy and proud to do that. It took time, especially when, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, a lot of the recipes are orally sort of transcribed, right? you're watching your parents, or you're watching someone who cooks, and they're telling you, this is how you do it, this is how you make this dish. So it was really important for me to sort of put those oral recipes and transcribe them into something that we can actually have tangibly now in a book. Because God forbid, my mom or my aunt, whenever it's time for them to pass, God forbid those stories and those recipes pass with them. And how do I preserve? How do I make sure that we can sort of continue on the great legacy of food and dishes, and I can enjoy them with my daughter, and my daughter can enjoy them with her family, whenever she's having them.
I still remember one of my aunties. We called her auntie, even though she was my grandmother, grandmother's age. She always said "ektu," which was a tiny bit of. Well, her a tiny bit of and my a tiny
Right.
bit of were terribly different, because my hands are big and fat, and
Exactly.
hers were tiny. And so I was going, "What is that?" She goes, "Ektu." It's Bengali for a little thing, a little bit.
Right.
And I was going, "What does that mean?" So that's what you're trying to find out now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The joke is, you stop seasoning until the ancestors tell you. But like, when do the ancestors tell you? Like, how much is that exactly?
That's fantastic. Tell me what they mean, though. Sankofa and Nea Omnin.
So Sankofa is really a symbol. They're both from the Ashanti tribe in Ghana, and they both sort of the symbols themselves mean so many things. There's so many different symbols, but Sankofa specifically. It means to move forward while honoring the past. It's the title of my children's book.
Right.
It's one that really resonates with me as well. The actual symbol is a bird looking behind but moving forward, and it really is one that I think it means so much to me as a chef, and as someone who really appreciates culinary arts, because I'd be remiss if I didn't know what the dishes before me were like. I didn't understand and didn't respect the dishes, that were made before me. And then Nyoman is one, really, it means when he who does not learn, he gets to know. It's a symbol of knowledge. It's of lifelong education.
Okay.
A continued quest of knowledge. So we signify the quest of knowledge really with the older or updated versions rather, and then the Sankofa means in the book at least, those are signified by the more traditional recipes.
And there's another phrase in there which I'm not going to pronounce. I'm going to ask you to pronounce it, but sewo where it was SEWOWERE.
Sewosi, correct. Yes,
you know this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what is trying to say in this, and where does that appear from?
Again, really, it's a sayings that mean so much to me, man. When you're talking about taking the spirit of the dishes and doing things earnestly and doing things as best as possible and really putting your best foot forward, that's where the symbol and the phrase comes from. And really, that was the sort of theme of the book. This is a 5-year project, and we put, man, I can't even tell you how many times I wanted to quit because it was hard, but you almost push through it and you persevere, and then you hopefully get a book that sort of captures the depth of all of the years that's in the time that's been put into this. So it's everything in this book is very intentional. And I think it sort of all comes together in that way.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to find. I've written 3 books, and they were all memoirs of where I was going in the world and what I was doing, and they were all very intentional. That's exactly what I have.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I even mentioned that. Well, we'll get to that later. But when I saw you for the first time cooking in Tournament of Champions, and I used that word. Okay, so tell us about some of the dishes that were mentioned. I've put a few down here, but you may have got them in front of you, you may not. So let's talk about fonio.
Yeah, fonio, an indigenous grain to West Africa. It's I think of it as in the family of quinoa or millets. Very, very small grain, but so hearty and nutritionally dense. Chef Pierre Tom is one chef from the region, from Senegal specifically, who has championed this amazing superfood, and has used it in so many different ingredients. Sorry, so many different recipes, including making a fonio beer, which I think is pretty cool. Using the
Wow.
sort of the yeast from it, and creating hops, and creating this really beautiful sort of slightly malted beer. And it's a great, great ingredient. And again, one that is indigenous to West Africa. So very excited to sort of have that throughout the book in different versions, and one ingredient that I love using here in the restaurant as well.
And where can you get it? Because I've been to Senegal and I've had this dish, and that was just, I mean, I loved Senegal. I really did. And I had fantastic, had thebu jen, the rice dish with Scotch bonnet, and the fish. That was fantastic. So, where can you get this dish, this grain in the US right now?
You know what? If you check local, man, it's so amazing. Even just through the 5 years of creating this book, and initially, um, sort of not worried, but it was in the back of my mind, like how is the everyday person going to get these ingredients if they really
Yeah.
want to cook authentically? And then even within the past 5 years, it's amazing to see the demand of these ingredients, and sort of the push to have these ingredients in your everyday grocers. So Whole Foods now carries fonio, which is amazing
Oh,
to me.
okay.
You can obviously get it online. Amazon is an incredible source for that as well. So now you're starting to see it pop up in many ways. In many ways that, like, let's say South American cuisine, I think maybe 10, 15 years ago was sort of the new trendy wave and push. And now you see ingredients like ají amarillo almost everywhere. It's really cool. So I love now walking through the aisles of the international markets, no matter what the grocer is, and seeing things like fonio pop up, which is really nice.
Yeah, which is very interesting for me, and I wanted to ask where that, because I'm tempted to go and cook with it, to be honest. Let's talk about some of the others. Okay, your mother's hot pepper sauce. And
Yeah.
I know you give the recipe for it, but I'd love you to describe it to our listeners, just what it is, because that looks really good.
Oh man, I got spoonfuls of that hot sauce in the restaurant, and you put it on everything, pizza. You put it on any other. It's delicious. It's essentially a pickled hot sauce. My mom would do a great job of combining tomatoes and bell peppers and a little bit of either Scotch bonnet or habanero, whatever you have available. And it's a sauce that she adds a little bit of vinegar to. I sort of took the umbrage and did my best to really enhance it. And I think I did a decent job of it. It's one that starts off sweet sour, and then maybe like 2 or 3 seconds later, it starts to get that heat. But it's not a very blasting heat. It's a very subtle heat, and it's absolutely delicious. So I love the combination of that pickling liquid. Again, and the pickling liquid itself is salt and sugar based. So again, that sweet sour comes in, and then the amazing ingredients. One thing I love about a habanero pepper specifically is, one, yes, obviously it brings heat, but there's an amazing floral note to it as well. There's a lot of fruity notes to it that really get highlighted in that hot sauce. So it's a great sort of all around hot sauce that we have in the book. And I encourage folks to just make a good amount of it. It lasts for a very long time in your refrigerator, and you'll start to notice you're throwing that on everything.
Do you use habanero, or do you use Scotch bonnet? Because Scotch bonnet is a lot stronger even than habanero, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So I like to use habaneros for the hot pepper sauce. But in a pinch, you can sort of tailor the Scotch bonnet. Maybe not add as much to it. You're still going to get those nice floral notes as well, but maybe scale back a little bit on that Scotch bonnet if you have that in house. But yeah, whatever you're using, Scotch bonnet, habanero, you're going to get a depth of heat that's again very subtle, and really not it's a background singer, if that makes sense, in a rather than being the forefront of the sauce.
Oh, and let's go through a few of them that I've got down here. Um, what? Tell me about bofrot, because I've not tried that before, and yet
Yeah.
you're giving it a claim that it's related to some dishes in New Orleans, or to one of the dishes in New Orleans. So I'd love you to describe that for me.
One of my favorites. I It's a running joke in my family, one that I'll probably never hear the end of. But when I was living with my grandparents in Ghana, I would yell every morning to the street vendors, "Bofro, Bofro," early morning, in my diapers to go ahead and grab one of these amazing sort of dishes. It's fried dough, essentially. It's I try to folks who've never had it. Liken it to a beignet, that you said that you get in New Orleans. So it's a fried dough. What makes it special is the use of like these warm spices. So you might have a version of bofrot with nutmeg, or maybe some clove or cinnamon, or maybe a combination of all three. And it's really, really great. Bofrot, it's called in Ghana. You might hear puff puff in other parts of West Africa, but really it's a fried dough. Yeasted, it's good yeast amount as well, or good yeast base rather, so it has a little bit of malted back note to it. I think it's absolutely delicious. We sort of enhance it, or not enhance it, really just take it to another level with a little bit of cinnamon sugar. We use like a malted ice cream gelato to pair with it. And it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh gosh, I'm getting so. I have to say, whenever I do these interviews with chefs, I do them with scholars and all kinds of people. But whenever I do them with chefs, I had Alex Guarnacelli on, and she was just talking about everything she was cooking, and I was just getting so hungry, and it's only 7:40 in the morning.
Exactly.
That sounds good. Oh, so that's one, and then the other. Well, there's a couple more. Can you tell me what Kelawele is? That
Ooh,
is that the right pronunciation again?
You said it better than me. Kelawele is a delicious street food snack of spiced sweet plantains and roasted peanuts. Very straight to the point. The sweet plantains are ripe. You got to get them when the skin is almost really dark, or black rather. And we take a sort of combination of wet and dry seasonings. The wet is a blend of ginger and garlic, maybe a little bit of onion in there. And then we add these beautiful spices of cumin, coriander, cayenne, and that sort of combination of those two, wet and dry. We soak or marinate rather the sweet plantains in that for, a full day is going to get you a really robust flavor, but it can go as short as maybe 2 hours. And they get just a really quick hot oil bath. You fry them, and then you just take some roasted peanuts right on top. I mean, you can go to town with that. It's just the perfect kind of bar snack food, with a nice pint, or just something that you can share between two fellows or a friend, and it's gone before you know it.
Now, when I listen to this, I listen to you talking about the spices, and in West Africa, they came from other parts of the territories where the colonizers went. So when do you think they came into into Africa, or was that from the beginning of enslavement and they took people out and then brought people in?
It's a little bit of a both, honestly. So as you mentioned, the region itself and the country specifically was under colonial rule from the British. So you'll see a lot of curry come from that area.
Yeah.
But then also Portuguese has a huge influence. So the peri peri pepper that is originated from Portugal has made its way to West Africa, and we have amazing dishes with peri peri and sort of one of the backbones to a lot of the dishes as far as heat that we get as well.
I was going to ask you about the peri peri rub, because that to me, when I read it, was something that I'd seen in South Africa, because they have Nando's, that thing that in the UK, everyone goes, they go out for a cheeky Nando's. That's
Nando's, yeah.
the say every. But I thought that was, I thought that was in South Africa, and then it got, it got shipped to because everyone knew peri peri
Mm-hmm.
from South Africa. But how did it get to West Africa?
Yeah, exactly that. So during the 1700th century, or sorry, the 17th century, the Portuguese made their way over down from Europe over to West Africa, hitting spaces like Sierra Leone and Ghana, but then also ultimately ending in parts of South Africa, Mozambique included as well. So you'll have almost the same pepper you'll see both in the lower region of Europe, hitting West Africa, and then hitting the southern part of Africa itself. So we'll have different versions, to your point, of that classic Nando's peri peri sort of sauce and rub in three different regions of the world, giving a really cool sort of eclectic mix, because now you're pairing other ingredients that are indigenous to that part of the world with that pepper, and now you're getting a very a profile of heat that's familiar, but then also a little bit different from the use of different cilantros and other, ingredients like, herbs and spices and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see how, food has sort of migrated, even though it's told through maybe the most not fortunate story. But I think there's some tasty sort of ramifications from it as well. And we've been able to use that pepper in so many amazing ways, the same way that South Africa and parts of Mozambique have been able to do as well.
Yeah, I know that I went from South Africa, I went through Zimbabwe, and then I went into Mozambique and went up. And everywhere I went, I had peri peri, but it was slightly different.
Correct, exactly.
And that was interesting, but I didn't know that it had gone. When I was in Senegal, I don't think I had any, but I had a lot of, their dishes, the yassa chicken and all of those were very famous dishes, but I didn't have that. But one more, because this is something that I love the sound of, but I'd love you to describe it. The fante fish stew, or did I get that? Did I get that wrong?
You are an honorary Ghanaian today, because you're hitting all the notes when it comes to the pronunciations. Yeah, Fanti fish stew is it's a oh man, I love this stew. One that we serve here at the restaurant as well. It's a fisherman stew. Kind of think of like a bouillabaisse. The story is all the cuts that the prize cuts rather that the fisherman wasn't able to sell. They use it and sort of like put it all together in a stew that's tomato based, maybe a little bit of palm oil, crayfish powder. So it has a bunch of just umami notes all throughout. Absolutely delicious.
So hungry.
Oh man. And it's really, truly one of my favorite things to eat. I actually had it last night as I'm thinking about it. And it's just a very humble, but just really delicious stew. We pair that at the restaurant in Elmina with a whole fried snapper or sea bass. And it's really just the perfect combination.
I just think I wanted to name some of those dishes because I wanted the people at home again to read some of the, hear you describing it, because that's what you use in the book. You're kind of with Korsha, you describe these dishes and they're so brilliant. So I want people to understand that. What I want to talk about as well was jambalaya and how that came about. Because did that come from jollof rice?
You know what? There's the red rice, jollof rice sort of. You'll see different versions of a jollof rice throughout the diaspora, the African diaspora. Whether it's again red rice in the American South, jambalaya, and similar to how we spoke about the peri peri pepper, sort of taking other ingredients that are from different parts of the world and putting it together specifically in the American South. That jambalaya is a version of jollof rice that has different cuts of chicken and seafood and andouille sausage as well, and it's an absolutely delicious and rich and hearty dish. One of my favorite things to eat when I go to places like New Orleans or elsewhere. But yeah, very, very similar as far as the base is concerned, taking that tomato base the same way that you would for jollof rice and creating a very depth a hearty rice base, and sort of just putting everything else together. It's one of the most delicious things that you can have if you've never had jambalaya, for sure.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And I just wanted to understand the mixture of that between, coming in from West Africa and ending up in New Orleans and that area anyway. So that's fantastic. But let me ask again one question. So very recently, in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was in Jekyll Island in Georgia, and that's where the site where the one of the last slave ships that came in when it was illegal um, to bring slaves in to this to America at this time, but they were
Mm-hmm.
bringing them in, and then once they were in, they could start kind of exchanging them, as it were, for and so this was they escaped the what do you call it, the Wanderer, this ship in
Mm-hmm.
Georgia, and they began to become the Gulagichi,
Yes.
the Gulagichi community. And you mention those a lot in this, and I'd love you just to explain to people what the Gulagichi is and why they were so important to food in the United States. Because that to me is again, the food, it comes from a bad place, but it's amazing, the food.
Absolutely, absolutely. That one of the more beautiful uh, cultures here in America. I think about like American culture and what truly like, man, I can't, a state or a region, specifically a state that has its own sort of vibrancy and life to it. And I can't think of Louisiana, specifically New Orleans, without saying that, right? And the same thing comes with South Carolina and the Gullah Geechee region. The people are descendants of West Africa, Central Africa as well, who have really taken the pride of the food, the culture, the traditions, the celebrations, the mournings, the funerals, and still hold them very true to this day and age. One of the ingredients that you'll see sort of hallmarks is rice and the use of rice, and the embodiment of that. One of my favorite chefs in America, period, BJ Jenis, is from that area, Gullah Geechee, and speaks so intelligently to the food and to the region, and speaks with passion about it all. But they are, as West African be, but then also as American can be. And they have such an amazing sort of point of view to the food, and to the region as well. And it's a small group; it's a very small community, but it's a robust one, and they have so much pride in everything that they do.
Yeah, and I've met. We had one of the events I went to. We had one of the chefs coming from the Gulagichi and cooking this meal for us, and I still dream about it now. But let's talk about your time as well. So let's talk about your continuing time on TV, because that's something special that's only happened to you now, or within the last few years. When I was first commenting on your cooking with our mutual friend, shall we say, Guy, um, I described it as your cooking as elegant, informed, strategic, and full of far-flung flavors. I'm trying to. So that's how I described it, and I didn't know you at the time, but I could see what you were doing,
Sure.
and coming around them. So tell us about your cooking now.
It's really a combination of traditional home, very meek, humble beginnings, but then also, I'm inspired by chefs like Michael and Brian Voltaggio. I'm inspired by chefs like Alex Morniscelli and Manish Chauhan, and chefs who take their culture and background and elevate it in a way that is both unique, a very cool offering. So I think I'm a little bit of all of that. I love combinations of flavors. I think my lens is West African, so I tend to go there. But I love the refinement. I love the sort of molecular gastronomy aspect of food. I love, all of the above. And it's, I don't know, how do I define myself as far as a chef? I just like to cook really good food, and I like to execute it well, as best as I can. And
which is as best as you can do.
Yeah, exactly that. Technical cooking is extremely important, and making sure that you hit those marks of if you're calling it a braise, it should be braised. If it's a well done, if it's a medium rare, it's a medium rare, so forth and so on. And putting those hours into making sure that the technicality points of the dishes are there. But then I think you start creating very special moments and almost creating jazz, when you can bring in your culture and other things in there as well. Yeah. When you can do that in that combination, Simon, then now you're really in a different ballpark. And, again, chefs like Manit Chauhan, who's able to do that so technically sound, but then also bring in her culture. And now she's in a different stratosphere. That's what I'm inspired by.
I first judged Manit 15 years ago. 16 years ago, in fact, on the next Iron Chef. And she was good then. And now I work with her a lot. And you can see how everything she's doing is building up and taking all this, the things that she learns along the way. And she comes up to now, she's on a totally different level. She's a great person to have. And I learned, I cook Indian food, but not like her. And so, but let's talk about that then, because I was going to ask you a couple of questions just about your cooking. When you cook a dish, and you learn to Johnson & Wales, is that right? Yeah. So how do you start? Do you start with the West African ingredients and you try to bring them into your techniques here, your French techniques, your, whatever you want, or you do it the other way? You have techniques and you wanted to bring West African rather, dishes into that.
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think it's technique driven for me. Again, going to Johnson & Wales and working in different restaurants, you learn sort of the fundamentals. But specifically speaking, as much as I love my alma mater, I didn't really get to study a lot of West African food there.
Yeah,
it was mostly French. It was mostly European centric, right? So it left sort of a yearning to want to see that food being represented on the same sort of scale as every other cuisine that was sort of lauded at the time. And now I think, I've been able to sort of help steward that with other amazing chefs from the country and the region and the continent itself. So I think of technique first. I think the dish should make sense. And then if there's opportunity to add in a West African flair or profile to it, then again, now it sets the dish apart from so many others. And I think really that's my superpower right there. Just as anybody else's superpower would be as well. So, again, technically sound food is always important. Nobody wants to eat, whether it's coming from China, Africa, Europe, if the food is not technically made right, no one's going to want to eat it. So, I think that should be the base, the hallmark of it first. And then after, the flavor profile really sets it apart.
And I think when you do that, I'm looking at some of your menus. So I said, let's talk about that menu as well. There are certain ingredients you like to bring to people, like you'll do an Eggs Benedict, so people will recognize that when they're reading it. But if you read what's in it, it's a lot different. You do steak and eggs, you do Wagyu ribeye, but underneath that, they mean something a lot more different. Is that how you describe that?
Absolutely. I think that's sort of the challenge in the sandbox that I like playing in, Simon, is making sure that I can appease and sort of remind and bring nostalgic memories to folks who are familiar with these ingredients and these flavor profiles, but then also offer something unique and exciting and new to people who are not. And I think the best way to do that is with sort of classic dishes offered in a unique way. So, doing a burger, a yassa burger, you're familiar with that flavor profile and sort of that oniony jam, with, turmeric and mustard and onion. But if you condense that down and put that on a burger, why wouldn't it be able to work? It's delicious. So stuff like that, or even the peri peri hollandaise.
Yes,
We talked
yes.
about the peri peri pepper itself, and placing that with the hollandaise. So yeah, there's different ways to sort of bridge the gap, so to speak. And I think offering very unique sort of dishes that are also familiar is a really cool way to do that.
Fantastic. And finally, before I get some other fun questions that I'm just going to do for you, what other interesting dishes have you seen coming out of Ghana itself? Because there are the traditional, but they also have lots of young chefs who come in and open these amazing restaurants using Ghanaian food like you. So have you been back to Ghana recently and have seen what they're doing? And I'd love to know what they're doing in those foods as well.
Yeah, I love it as well. I think it's a cool sort of renaissance that's happening in the creative space, specifically in food. I've been able to go to Ghana last year, and I try to get to the country once or twice every year. Um, as great as the classics are, you have chefs who are doing some really unique offerings, and what I'm seeing as well is sort of the the unification of the continent, of bringing different African cuisine from Central Africa, East Africa, South Africa, and combining those dishes ingredients together, and now offering almost like this global continental approach to the cuisine, which I think is brilliant and unifying in a way that's really cool. So yeah, there's a lot of chefs doing amazing things. You know, the youth always has something new to
Always.
offer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's, sometimes it sticks, and when it does, it's very impactful, and it's a movement. It's very impactful.
We've got some what I call fun questions. If you yourself were a meal, what would it be?
That's a great one. If I was a meal, I would have to be rice. I can eat rice 8 days a week. I can eat it all morning and night. So I would be rice. A rice dish, same thing. It's got to be rice, paella, risotto, jollof,
Any type of
planche.
rice as well.
Uh, Give me any sort of rice dish, and I'm taking it down. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, this is an interesting one. If you had to go back in time to any meal,
Mm.
where would it be? Any time, it could be at your family's house. It could be, one of you.
Yeah.
You tell us.
Two things. I don't know if I'm cheating with this one, but two memories come to mind. My parents' house, and having fried yam and fish and the different sauces. That mom's hot sauce and the shita. Those are just some of my favorite food memories. And then probably my most memorable dining experience at a restaurant was at 11 Madison Park for my birthday, my 30th birthday or something like that. And just uh, the poetry and the food and the tasting menu. It was an incredible experience. So those two things come to mind for sure.
If you had time to go back in time to see the invention of anything, where would you go?
The invention of anything? Really? Anything?
Yeah, anything.
That's an incredible question. That is an incredible question. I would say, huh. I might be cheating here, but like I was around for it, but like when it specifically happened, the internet. I feel like the internet was
Okay.
probably one of the last most impactful inventions that has definitely caused ripple waves and still is causing ripple waves. So it was early '90s or late '80s, I believe.
Early 90s. You
Yeah,
are
yeah,
talking about. Yeah, I was well into my growing up by then.
yeah.
But I was in my 30s. But that was no. That's a perfectly good
I would say
answer.
that, and really like the boardroom or the moments when it all sort of happened, and who was there to first like talk about it, and you know I can communicate with someone from halfway across the world, and in that matter of an instant, and I guess passing that idea, making it like you know something that was, yeah, let's do it. Like I would love to have been in that room when the internet happened.
I think I would add to that the people who began writing about food. So that was the first time, maybe 25 years ago, we had Chowhound, E. Gullett, and I was actually there when it happened, and I got onto those, and that's where I began to know Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
He was on those, and he began to contact me and go, "Oh, I like this. Can I come and go to this pub with you?" And he did that to me.
I love that.
And I thought, and I was going, how does Anthony Bourdain come to me and get in and go to a pub in London?
Yeah.
And that to me was something
that's incredible.
Just so, remarkable. And that really kind of got me into that area. He was, but all that because we had Heston Blumenthal was on there. You would talk about all these people that you could come and do those. Heston Blumenthal was one of the great molecular guys and also historical guys. You had I mentioned Ed Schoenfeld at Red Farm. He would come in and talk about his dumplings and all of these people, and they were just fantastic because otherwise I'd never have known about them apart from buying a book, and they were all there. So I think that's a very, very good idea. And finally, what are your social media sites so people can see, what you're up to, where you're going to be, all these, because that's very, very important. People have got to know where to find you. Yeah, talk about the internet.
Social media. So yes, Chef Eric Adjepong, ADJEPONG. That is across all the platforms. My website, chefadjepong.com. Where else? Foodnetwork.com is another great place to figure out the next showing and taping. I try to have a nice digital presence as much as possible. It's tough. It feels like a whole another job, dealing with that, but it's so important. Yeah.
I just want to say, first of all, thank you for being on. You are an amazing chap. And when I'm talking about West Africa, that's one of my favorite areas that I've visited in the world. The people there are so kind. The food is just amazing. Everything about it is a great thing. So having you, I think you're going to take West African food into all kinds of new realms because you're the only person, or not the only person, but a person who goes out and really brings that food into people's homes, and particularly with things like the Food Network, I think you're really taking them there. So thank you.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Make sure to check out the websites associated with this podcast at www.eatmyglobe.com, where we will be posting the transcripts from each episode, along with all the references and resources we used putting the episodes together, in case you want to delve deeper into each subject. There is also a contact button, so please do let us know if there are any subjects that you would like us to cover. And if you like what you hear, please don't forget to join us on Patreon. Subscribe, recommend us to your family and friends, and give us a good rating on your favourite podcast provider. Thank you, and goodbye from me, Simon Majumdar. We'll speak to you soon on the next episode of Eat My Globe, things you didn't know about food. The Eat My Globe podcast is a production of It's Not Much, But It's Ours and Producer Girl Productions. We would also like to thank Sybil Villanueva for all of her help, both with the editing of the transcripts and essential help with the research.